Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. I am not even sure what episode this is. To be honest, it's been a super tough week. Just wanted to sort of change course on this one and just kind of share some news and some stories about the great Jeff Smith. As I'm sure you've heard, Jeff passed away for when we're taping this last week on Thursday. And I remember when the news hit, it's one of these just complete shocks. And I'm not sure I'm even over the shock at this point. I think it's going to take a really long time. You know, I only knew Jeff for 7 years. And the reason spending an episode and maybe more on this is because Jeff is one of those mentors that has had the impact on so many people. It's just mind-boggling. I only knew Jeff for 7 years before he passed away. And our time on the podcast together was the last couple of years of that. The impact that he's had on my life is almost immeasurable, to be honest with you. And I only knew him for 7 years. I've been able to talk to people recently who've known him for 40 years. Somebody who taught for almost 50 years. His impact is just tremendous. And to a fault, people talk to you about him and just can't talk enough about what he did for them as a mentor and as a person. For me, 2016 was a really hard year. My children were young, and my wife and I are both band directors. So for people who have young kids and are band directors, I completely feel for you. It's a hard time to try to do everything in your life well. And I was really struggling. We had finished our marching band season, but I did not feel like we had reached our potential. And I felt like it was on me, because I think that's what a good leader does, is they try to take extreme ownership for their program and everything. And, you know, of course it wasn't all on me, but I just felt like I was doing too much and not doing it well enough. We had received a gold medal, which I was happy with, but it was by the slimmest of margins, and I just didn't feel great about anything because I felt like I was just spinning too many plates. So I reached out to a couple people, one being my mentor and amazing friend, Andy Boysen, and he had mentioned Jeff's name. He said, yeah, we have this guy who is a retired band director who does our drill at UNH, and he lives in Wolfboro, and you should give him a call. He's a fantastic, legendary teacher. So to me, someone who's retired, I'm going to use air quotes because Jeff actually never retired. He, as his wife said, allegedly retired, was busier than most full-time teachers. Jeff and I talked on the phone, and I said, hey, here's the deal. You know, we're looking for somebody to help the program and to jump in, and we only have $2,000, and we're an hour and a half away. And then all the things. And he said, I'll do it. I'd love to. And he showed up to our first meeting. And at that meeting, we had chosen music from the planets. We were going to use, you know, obviously Jupiter and Mars, but also Venus. So he came in kind of partway through our design process, and he showed up to the meeting, which we were going to quote unquote try him out. I think he was actually trying us out, to be honest with you. And he showed up with 4 different show plans. And in my head, before I looked closer, I was like, does this guy not realize we've already chosen our show? I thought I was pretty clear on that. And the more I listened, of course, he had not only taken that show design, but had taken that and given us 4 completely different concepts that we could use with that music. I forget what they were all called, but one of them is the one we went with, was called Nostradamus. And we did the astrology piece with Nostradamus predicting the future with the music from the planets. And it was a great show. But what Jeff taught me over the years was, I mean, so many things to even mention, but he was always prepared, never forgot a name. He brought this energy to rehearsal where, as a band director who had been in the classroom all day, sometimes if we go to marching band right afterwards, you're just kind of struggling, energy wise and focus wise. Maybe you've had to plan for 5 rehearsals and this is your rehearsal number 6 that day. And he was able to come in with a fresh energy. And if you know Jeff, that energy was there all the way till just this past fall. And he had this focus and was able to sort of run our rehearsals with my help and everybody in the staff's help. He also, there's a place in my heart for someone who's a retired band director and they want to write drill and travel over an hour and a half to each rehearsal. And he was amazing as a sounding board for me. I was able to, just talk about things that were going on in the school and in my head about our program that I kind of couldn't talk to anybody else about because they just didn't have the experience. And he was such a good listener. And then he would say, well, when that happened for me, this is what I did. And the majority of the time, his answer was what I would have done anyway. But he was also really good at pushing me to think about things a different way. And then in the end, if I chose not to listen or I chose my side in a disagreement we had, he always understood that, and when there's the band director, when there's a band, the band director sort of has to have that final say. And, 90% of the time, I went with what his thoughts were because I knew of his amazing experience. But he was so good at supporting and pushing me to be the best teacher I could be, but also never wanted to overshadow the work that I had done with the students prior to that. He just wanted to build on the program that we had. If you are not aware, he's from Norwalk, Connecticut, and was there for a really long time. There's so many things that he has done. He was at a middle school and then a high school for a short amount of time, and then the majority of the time at Norwalk High School. And just to think about having the enormity of the program that he had for so many years, and he was the drill designer, he was the music arranger, he was the band director, he did the jazz ensemble, he did the pit orchestra. He would talk about things he did, and to be quite honest, I thought he was lying half the time. I was like, there's no way you did that. But you know what? I bet you there was some fabrication to some of his stories. But Jeff, I look back, and he was absolutely right on all of it. He just worked so hard. And there's times when people would kind of come up with excuses why something couldn't be done well in a program. And he would just look and say, do you want to do the job or not? Do you want to do it well or not? If you want to do it, work hard at it and make it your best. He was able to talk about things. He just loved talking shop. And not marching band, just band director stuff. And we had a similar vision in that wind ensemble put on the field is what marching band is. And he was a staunch proponent, as I am, of the wind band being the center of the entire program, and marching band and jazz ensemble and indoor percussion and everything else going around that as the motor to your program. He just had a way of supplying the energy. And I felt like no matter what was happening in school or in life, I was able to give him a talk, give him a call, and he was able to help me out the best he could. Sometimes by affirming and sometimes just saying, you know what, have you thought about this? And then would kind of go on. So, he's touched so many people. I only knew him for 7 years. And again, I was just talking to Ron Secchi this morning from Brian McMahon High School, and he was saying that, he knew him for 40 years. They did all the life things together. And I can't even get my brain around the amount of people who see him the way I do and even greater. And I'm just forever grateful for him. I'm looking forward to here in a second where I'm going to bring on some of my staff members that I get to work with at Westbrook High School in specifically the marching band component. And we're just going to kind of tell some stories of Jeff and the things that Jeff taught us and what we felt like made him such a fabulous educator. So we'll do that here in a second. I just wanted to thank everybody for supporting the podcast because Jeff's vision like mine, is one of being a lifelong learner and having growth mindset. So he has been instrumental in starting this podcast, even though he sort of bowed out a little bit ago because there was just a lot going on with his schedule. Of course, his quote unquote retired schedule. But he's just such an amazing influence for so many people. And I know people can learn so much from him. So, again, what a great man. And I don't know when it's going to hit me that I can't call him up anymore. But he's really, really going to be missed. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely brought our staff together a little bit more. But it's just some things in life you don't have a playbook for. As a band director, I feel like a lot of things can happen and I'm ready for it. And I've done it before and I know how to handle it. And when this happened, I didn't have anywhere to go. So, you know, the next morning after we found out, we invited all of our, at least marching band students who knew him, into the school. We had a day off and we just cried and laughed and wrote in chalk and told stories and all that. And I know there's so many people around the world who are feeling the same way we are. And it's just such a blessing to have known him. And I'm going to continue to look for his guidance as long as I live. And I look forward to meeting him again soon. Well, okay, that's weird. Not too soon. Eventually, I'd like to see him again. One thing that I always remember about Jeff was no matter how amazing of a story you had, he always had a better story that was exactly the same. Like, hey, Jeff, we got 12 kids into Allstate. We're so excited. That's amazing, Kyle. In 1971, I had 646 kids get into Allstate, and 900 of them played the oboe. And obviously that's a joking one, but like he always had something you're like, oh, okay, you win again. Any of you guys have any stories like that?
For me, I guess similar sort of vein as how he could always quote like the exact group, the exact year that anybody did any show for the last like 30 years. I mean, you know, they did that like Carolina Crown from 1972 or whatever it was. Yeah, and I never knew whether he was, telling the truth or not when he did that, but he sure made it sound like he had eons of marching band shows just memorized in his mind.
I used to love when Eric was part of the group because he could he could say if that was real or not for past marching bands. That was always fun. And he'd be like, "Wait, is that?" And then they'd look it up, and Jeff was almost always right. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I remember one time we were like, "Oh, we've got a couple kids marching drum corps," and he's like, "Yep, that's true. I had 64 kids march drum corps." Like, how do you know that? But he was right.
I just remember like how supportive Jeff was of everyone in his life always. Like I have this very specific memory of not this year's finals, but last year's finals. Like it was just me and him for some reason talking and chatting, and he was telling me how he thought I had like this huge, great, long career ahead of me and how I'll do great things and yada yada, and how he was so happy I joined the Westbrook staff. And I was always like, "Oh, you like me." And that's how he was always, like watching him in critique, like fight for our kids. Like that man was nothing but passionate about everything he did.
Yeah, I'm hearing all the stories from him in his Connecticut years, and I want to assure people who didn't see him in his New Hampshire years, he had the passion all the way. He never let down.
I mean, to be fair, that sounds like from everything I've seen and heard, like his whole entire life. I mean, just everywhere he went, people were just, absolutely enamored with, as you said, his passion and how much he truly, you could tell he cared about everybody. I mean, sometimes he'd give people a hard time, to make sure they were doing 110% of the best they could do. But at the end of the day, he genuinely cared about absolutely everybody he came in contact with. And everybody just, was, like I said, was absolutely enamored with him.
Yeah, you could see the passion and excitement on his face, everything he did, just you could tell that he just was all in and cared about everybody, even the times where the whole band would have to repeat a set because somebody was off, and he'd give them a hard time, but then look back at us staff and smile, and then, yep, gonna redo this set. And but he cared about them so much, even so.
Man, I'll never forget. He'll like have finished just like screaming at the band, and he'll just like turn to us and go like with like that little the goofy grin of his. Just always so good.
Janae, you are quite passionate as well. And you and Jeff had you never came to fisticuffs, I don't think. But
No.
you guys were.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that as you guys were talking about how passionate he was, because I really feel like every single argument I can remember having is just because both of us care so much about being good and what we think is best, and that wasn't always the same thing. But I feel like every season I've worked with him and all the time spent, we were able to come to a place where like of just conclusion that whatever it was, we were able to figure it out to make it work for best for both of us. And I definitely sometimes took longer to visualize his vision than some others. But I think, yeah, I can't think of an argument, and there were many, but I can't think of one where it was for any reason other than I think this is best. No, I think this is best. Okay, well, we'll figure it out. So yeah, I don't know. Like that wasn't well spoken, but
Well, it was never personal between the two of you. It wasn't like
Right.
oh, I hate Janae, oh, I hate Jeff. It's like you said, it was like you're both very passionate about
yeah,
art.
yeah,
And I think we all understood that what we had in Jeff with us was really special. That we didn't always agree, because nobody agrees with everybody all the time. But he just was so good with such a wealth of experience. And we were just blessed to have him on our team for the length of time that he was there.
yeah. I'm really grateful for this past season. I feel like he and I we just learned to communicate better, and I'm super grateful that we've had that season together where like I feel like we worked really well as a team, and he let me do my thing, but I think I trusted him a little bit better with other things. And the level of growth as just a person, a teacher, a coach, just a human being in general, like I feel like my day job I do better because of working with him. I know that sounds really cliche. But I'm grateful for the growth I've had as a human being, having known him, which I think most of us could say if you worked with him for a length of time. But and you can't say that about everybody. Like you'd like to be able to, but it's genuinely meant with him. I deal with people better because I've the time spent with him.
I will say it was interesting watching Janae and Jeff go at it. I had to mediate a few times.
Just watching the two of them try to kind of outsass each other was worth the price of admission every time.
Every time. Absolutely.
I was amazed at his energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, so when I first joined the staff, and you all pretty much know this, that I knew next to nothing about the marching band world. I mean, I was coming in just about as green as you could possibly be. I knew how to play instruments, and that was about it. And Jeff just like I feel like took me under his wing and pointed out, all the various things of what it was all about. And I that sort of information for me was just invaluable. It helped me become a better teacher for it, not just in marching band, but in my regular band job too. He just knew everything. He knew the right answer for everything. And that kind of information, that kind of knowledge, and that kind of, like I said, taking me under his wing was really, there's not enough words for that. I can't be possibly any more grateful for that.
And even if his answer, like if he didn't have an answer for it, he'd convince you that his answer was the answer.
That is true. Yes.
Oh,
I think that's one of the characteristics that we keep hearing about Jeff is that he would take people under his wing. It was like it was his thing, whether he realized that he had done it or not. And, Kyle and I met Jeff when we were, oh, I don't know, like 10 years into teaching already, right?
into teaching,
Yeah.
it was 2016.
So
So for me, it was 14 years.
14
For you, it
years,
was like 11 years.
11. So we were that far into teaching and we were looking for something else. And, I don't know if you guys already talked about this, but going through the process of trying to find somebody who would work with our program and provide what we thought it needed so much, we chose Jeff, and I had no idea what would come with Jeff.
I think he actually chose us. Like
And
we chose him,
yeah.
but he actually.
I mean,
chose
yeah,
us.
both ways. Like we got this incredible designer and we got this incredible friend and this incredible mentor and this wealth of knowledge that I never realized. And then we all had him take us under his wing all at once.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that mentor part. It was interesting. My freshman year, there was no Jeff, and then my sophomore year was Nostradamus, his first year. So I kind of got an interesting perspective where I got to see the same marching band more or less before and after, and just like, oh my goodness, we were whipped into shape. And also the dynamic of like, as a student, I would always know, oh, Jeff is kind of like this hard ass, but he's always pushing us to be the best. And then I got a new kind of perspective being in the staff, where now like he's the first to call you out on your mistakes as a student. But anytime there was any judge going off on some BS, whatever, Jeff is the first one to go and defend the students. I noticed that specifically this season.
I remember that moment with the first show that he designed. We were looking for something different for the marching band program because we knew that it was something that we couldn't do. And so we wanted to find an X factor, something that would put us on a different level than where we were at. And we knew that we couldn't do it ourselves, which is why we kind of went through this process to begin with. And, I became like sideline girl and the chef for the staff. And like, I wasn't really on like an active role in the staff. So I went to the first show and it was a Westbrook show, I think, very early in the season, and sat in the stands and watched you guys come on the field with whatever his design mission was for the first 15 seconds of the show. And it was like an awe just went right over the crowd. Like, this is different. This is different. This is special. This is unique. And there was so much pride in the group because of what was brought to the table in that moment. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is what Jeff's doing for the program, but look what he's doing for the kids. Like they're so proud of this. And it's the first week.
I think he did the same. Like we said, like he and I butted heads a lot of it. But I know that when we had issues with guard staff or things happen, like I knew that he had my back without saying it, like the same way kind of that you're saying, Gabe, where he beats you up to your face, but when it comes push to shove, he'll defend you till the end. And I really felt like he was doing that for me. With just all the stuff that happened, I really felt supported by him, and he didn't have to say it. It was just kind of the way he carried himself through that. I have to go in a minute here, but I'd like to share the other thing. My favorite Jeff stories, I think. My favorite I won't share because it's not for sharing, but but my favorite ones I think are when he would chase the kids around the field. Like that'll always be the image of him in my head. It's just like him shuffling, as I call it, around the field after the kids. I think that's just, talking about energy as an old man. Jeez Louise, I don't know. I can't keep up, man.
He definitely always brought that. I mean, he was, I felt like even for us adults, a lot of times he was kicking our tails around, trying to make sure. And I feel like, he kept the kids accountable. I feel to a certain extent, he kept me accountable too, and made sure I was giving 110% best of what I could do. And everybody improved for that.
Adam, you were talking earlier about not knowing anything on the marching band side of things and jumping on. I remember within the first week, he looked at me and said, "Adam's going to be amazing." Because he said it even by the end of that year. He talks about you and Missy just on the horn staff at the time, and he's like, "They're both phenomenal. Like, you're so lucky to have them." And I said, "I know."
We didn't pick him because of his marching band.
He thought the world of you.
Well,
Fast learner.
Appreciate that, and the feeling was likewise too. That definitely. I thought, I quickly realized how much of a giant in the world he was, and I tried to soak up as much as I possibly could from him.
I don't know why this just made me think of this, but the tribute video that Norwalk did for Jeff, there's a guy, I want to say it's just like 20 seconds in, who talks about, he's like, you meet him, you either love him or you hate him.
Chris
But if you
Rivera.
hate him, once you understand him, then you love him. And I was like, dang it, why are you going to call a girl out like that? The truth of that statement was like, because he comes in so hot, but it really was like, I was like, oh, shoot.
The kids were the same
So
way
weird.
though, like listening
Yeah.
to the kids talk about it, especially the middle school kids, like they were terrified of him. And then we would get Jeff's stories, and then I'd hear Jeff's name, and I'm like, oh, they met Jeff. Okay. And then they'd tell all their friends about Jeff. And sometimes it was like, that guy's crazy, or that guy is like, he yells all the time. And then it turned into, we love Jeff. He's awesome.
Yeah.
We think he's so amazing. Like, do you guys realize that you had no idea what was happening to you the first couple of weeks? He is like screaming out in the parking lot, trying to get you to run faster than his grandmother.
We, in summer rehearsals for Color Guard, we always do like a session right before band camp of like just things that the vets have, like stuff that they'd like to share with the newbies coming in or whatever. And one of the captains one year, she called him, she was like, you'll meet Jeff. He's a bit of a crusty raisin. And I was like, what? But I feel like it was such a good description because he is, but like really he's like sweet under that wrinkly crusty mess. He's just, it just was like the perfect way to describe him, and I'll never forget that.
All the stories people were talking about how he could outrun the kids and had so much energy really made me think. I had the pleasure of working with Jeff when I was in college because he worked with the UNH marching band, and like we overlapped the couple years I was in the group there. And I just remember like my junior year when I was drum major, like he was still keeping the college kids on their toes with his energy, because typically in college the kids had marched 4 or 5 plus years and still have experience and knowledge. But like him shouting about echelons, which we had never heard before, and like running around like Jeff runs around, we were just like, all right, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you always think you have this activity fully figured out. Even when I was in high school and I'm like getting to the end of my marching band run, and I'm like, oh, I'm a senior, I know what I'm doing, I know what I've got to do, and then he keeps throwing surprises your way, and just I'm always pushing you to be the best version of yourself, not just in a marching band context, but I feel like a lot of his principles outside of that I've been able to apply in my own life, like the whole, like if you're early or on time, if you're on time, you're late kind of thing. Every single job interview I've ever been to, stuff like that. I've always been able to apply that. And just the constant push to be better. It was never static with him. Again, like I said, even if you thought you had it all figured out, he would still find a way to challenge you, and then you would, be a better musician or whatever as a result of that.
Was it Jeff's idea to have the drum line do the color guard flags that one show? Yeah. and before that, again, everything was new for me 7 years ago. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, there's some ideas here that I just never would have imagined.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm a vet, I know how to march. Great, this season going to be easy breezy. It's like, well, actually, you guys are going to learn a little bit of color guard stuff now. Is that cool?
At
I
UNH, he
remember,
had the entire horn line spin flag. Like everyone put down their instruments, got a flag, and it was insane.
Hmm.
I remember when I decided to bring him on the staff. It was a big move that like a lot of people would probably have a hard time with because I was the quote unquote band director, but I knew that he had had this long and storied career and he could help our students. And I'm just happy that I was kind of in the position of not of being able to be humble about it and not having to have my way, just trying to find what was the right way. Because you're right, what we were doing before just wasn't the best that we could be, and it's just hard to divide yourself in all these ways, right? But he was able to come in with that energy, fresh, like he'd had 10,000 cups of coffee, and then able to take that energy, and we were all able to support him in that role. So just the ability for me to be able to kind of step back and let him do a lot of stuff. I'm thankful that I was able to do that.
Where you have, you know, what works, and there are things that will yield high scores. And then he always was looking for a new way to shake things up a little bit, be that just visually, like adding more sets or variations of sets, or even just like the show ideas in general, like always coming to the table. I only had a few of those where actually no, this last season was my first ever like Westbrook show pitch meeting where we had like he came to the table with these 6 to 8 ideas or whatever, and we kind of sifted through, and just like almost all of them were just so like here's something new to shake it up. Oh, Maine has never seen this before. And not just one of those ideas, but again, even the ones we didn't pick would have just totally shaken everything up and just like made an impact on the circuit as a whole.
He had so much in his mind that we could never understand exactly what was on that paper. There was not a lot of talking from the rest of us when he would put those show ideas down. It was like, okay, here he goes. I wonder where he's going with this. I don't see it. I know Jeff sees it. Okay, let's go with that one.
But you know he was passionate about it and could deliver. If he came to you with some insane idea, like it wasn't just going to fall flat. Like you know he was committed to it. So
Yeah,
if he's coming to you with something completely outside of the box, you know he at least has an understanding of what he wants it to do, and also how to get there.
like building a train and making it move in a marching
Hey,
band.
at least the show didn't get named Nut Meats, so
Explain the story behind
it
that
all
one.
worked out. So people who don't know, our show this past season called Salvage was kind of like a steampunk inspired show, like took place in a junkyard and everything. And when we were trying to like pitch names for the show, he's like, well, steampunk spelled backwards is nut meat, so like that could be a good, and we thought he was kidding. Like we're like, oh, that's a joke, like laughing, whatever. And then like we suggested more things and he went, no, but I was serious about nut meats. And we're like
That
Jeff,
was the aha moment. He finally found it. You know, for all the amazing ideas he actually came up with, I feel he gets a pass. He gets
absolutely. Oh yeah. We're like,
so
Jeff, we normally do whatever you want. In this case, we're not
No.
calling it nut meats.
Jeff gets all serious after that and says, no, I'm serious about this title, after we're laughing hysterically.
It was one of those things that I jumped in and I'm like, I'm going to say no to this. Let's move on. It just was not.
No power there.
Oh, so funny.
Whenever we go around with those naming things every year, to me, like I want to hear every idea, right? We go around the table for 30 minutes, 3 different times, just throwing out ideas, and we laugh at all of them because they're all stupid. But out of that comes the one. So I always try to cultivate that. Everybody put in their ideas, even if you think they're stupid. So Nut Meats was potentially one of those.
I think it was one of those.
He has so many good ideas that he gets a pass. He can have a couple duds. He's earned it.
But then he also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thinking along that line, like I remember very vividly the third show that I was a part of was our Fearless show. And for those who aren't familiar, it's a Americana type of themed show. And I'll never forget each and every week at rehearsal, like I would see something new happening, every single week. And that last week, like adding in kind of the grand finale that nobody had seen before. And then all of a sudden I'm at that rehearsal and I'm like, wait a minute, I've never even seen this before, and it's amazing. And those million ideas are all swimming around in his head, and at some point they're all going to come out and just make our show 1,000 times better than it was.
Yeah, and he knew when he could add some of those, or when he'd say, you know what, if we add any more, they're not going to be able to retain it, because he always had way more ideas, and we just kind of got to whatever the kids could handle. We didn't go past that. I remember that very end. What was it? My Country 'Tis of Thee was like the final push moment, and we had the band record in the chorus room the vocal part to that. So then we layered the band singing on top of the band playing, and that's like one of the final things.
I think with that, like, ever evolving this show, really goes to show his like extra level of understanding of this activity as a whole. Obviously, this is adjudicated. There is a score you are given. There are judges, but I think he really understood, and then also passed this understanding on to, fellow staff and also students, that this is also for the audience. There are people that are taking their time to come and see all these shows. So of course we want to do well for the judges, but also like the audience has to have a good time, whether that be like, I know he had a lot of audience engagement, different things for like pre-shows and stuff, getting the audience involved, but also just having big moments where, again, like I said, obviously the judges are being pleased, but the audience also is a very integral part of the experience. And he understood that very, very well.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
It also for me really hit this season, even though I'd worked with him prior, but like to really just like trust the process that is Jeff, and like know that even if something needs to just like right off the bat you think's crazy, like it's probably gonna work out. Like when he first suggested like a handful of kids will have bright argyle socks and roll one pant leg up, I silently was like, I hate this idea. This is horrible. But then the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, wait, no, that's good. That looks really cool. And how Kyle, you and I, like with the train, our first thought for the smoke machine was like, oh, it's gonna go in the smokestack and like come out when like the sound happens, because like to us that was the typical like general effect moment. He like really fought for, no, it's gonna come out the bottom at this point, so when they march around it like makes the smoke blow around. And we're like, oh, okay. But then like really seeing it happen at finals the way like he had envisioned it, I was like, yeah, that was correct. Like, of course it
And
was.
part of his point with that too is, if to us it was obvious because there's like a huge train sound, and that would be a big GE moment. But then his point was that you're giving it away with a minute and a half left in the show.
Yeah.
He said, wait to the end of that part and then do it with 30 seconds left. And that's where you get your final GE moment.
And it was great.
And watching that smoke swirl at the end was like stunning. Like it was just, the whole audience was like totally with them. They were totally with them at that second. They were like watching a movie and that was unfolding. It was like a suspense moment.
And yeah, again, like I said, I'm sure the judges appreciated our little smokestack gimmick, but like somebody being in the audience, like that is genuine entertainment.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when that train was on the 50.
The center of the train was on the 50.
Center of the train, yeah.
Because often it was not centered or on the 45.
Or a train.
Sometimes it was not a train. That's right.
Missing pieces.
But you have those high expectations and the kids rise to them.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.